Hey everyone, welcome back to the hardware news update for the week. This is a packed episode. We'll be talking about NVIDIA's Lovelace rumors for the next GPUs. We'll also be talking about the fine, I'll do it myself approach to manufacturing GPUs, going over AMD's preemptive response to Intel's i3 CPUs in the Alder Lake family, and a couple of other items like Montech taking GN's criticism seriously and updating its Air 1000 light case, which is cool news to hear. So we'll be talking about all of that and more. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 2 line of liquid coolers, which tested among the best in our thermal charts for CPU coolers. The Arctic Liquid Freezer series has had continual advancement since our original review, with updates in the mounting kit, including an AMD offset bracket for better thermals, and a longer warranty. Arctic also has its MX5 thermal compound, available on the market now if you need some thermal paste for your regular maintenance. Learn more at the links in the description below. So first up, quick GN item. At the end of the year, every year, we like to do a donation drive towards one of the charities that we like to support. We've done this for a couple of them over the last few years, and this time we're working with Eden Reforestation Projects. They support people, first and foremost, and they support the environment and habitat. So we'll be talking about that in a moment, what they do. But what we're doing until December 15th from now is donating 10% of the gross store revenue from store.gamersnexus.net to Eden Reforestation Projects. Additionally, once we get to that December 15th mark and we take the 10% of the gross revenue and donate that to them, I will be adding in double of that. So I'm going to match whatever that amount ends up being on December 15th. This is a great time to grab one of the items you've wanted from the store, like the toolkits, which are on back order, or the mod mats now. Of course, we also just really like supporting these groups. Cat Angels in the past, Eden Reforestation Projects, St. Jude's we've worked with, especially with EVGA and some of the overclocking battles with Jay. And if you'd rather just donate straight to Eden Reforestation Projects, that is completely fine with me. You don't have to buy something from us, but it's a fantastic opportunity to do so and support them if you wanted something anyway. If you want to donate to them, we'll link it below, though, just in case you prefer that route. Now, we have the toolkits coming in very soon. They are on back order. There's a lot of them. We also have the Volt mod mats on back order arriving within the next couple weeks. So those will be here basically imminently at this point. And if you place a back order on a Volt mod mat, which sell through extremely fast, as do the toolkits, then you're guaranteed to get one in the next run, and it'll just ship in the next couple of weeks, so it's not even that much of a back order. The Volt mod mats, if you don't already know, are a PC building work surface. They are anti-static conductive, so you can connect the included grounding point, the common ground point, and the ESD wrist strap if you would like to make sure your work surface is grounded while you're working on more sensitive electronics. Additionally, it's got wiring diagrams. If you do anything with Ethernet wiring, we've got 568A and 568B, both on the bottom left of the mod mat, giving you a pinout with clip side down of how to wire those up if you make your own Ethernet cables. We have RGB connectors listed because those are a nightmare, so it helps to have those on the mod mat too. We've actually used those a lot recently. There's GPU power and CPU power pinouts. There's a 24-pin connector, and we've clearly marked where you can jump start the computer or the power supply rather if you're doing some debugging and troubleshooting. We have some screw sorting trays and a grid for helping you map your components as you take them apart. And it's extremely heat resistant. You can see when we're working with tube bending, heat gun, no problem at all. We've worked with the mod mats for soldering, no issues. We've worked with it with overheating pre-built computers, and those haven't melted it either. So that's really about the truest test you can get for heat resistance, is just put the Dell G5 on it and turn it on, see what happens. It survived. Of course, we also have all kinds of cool shirt designs. We have the GN toolkits, and we've got the GN Bar Runner bar mats. The coasters won't be back in for a little while. We do have an order on the way. Not available right now, not up for back order yet, but the Bar Runner, the bar mat, is the same materials, same extremely detailed rubber design, and if you'd like to grab one of those are on the store. Now, as for Eden Reforestation Projects, to just talk about them really briefly here, we've worked with them a lot. What they do is they take revenue that is donated directly to them for planting trees and reforesting deforested areas. This includes things like old growth forests. But what I like about them particularly is Eden Reforestation Projects works with the regions in which they are doing the tree planting to hire locals who are maybe impoverished or in poor economic conditions to do all of the planting and create a long-term job for those locals by having them maintain and protect the forest once it's been planted. So it's not typically just a one shot. There is some long-term employment there. And we like that because they're not just coming in and planting everything and then leaving. They're actually helping the people who are nearby. It helps to make sure that the work stays as it was left so that it's not just cut down again later and sold for charcoal, which is actually a common problem for forests around the world that are in less protected areas. And they do great things for the people economically who live in these areas, who work on the project. It has long-term environmental and economic benefit to those regions. And obviously it's a prevention of habitat loss. So that's an awesome thing too. So we're happy to support them. And you can go to store.gamersnexus.net, again, where 10% of your purchase through December 15th will be applied to a donation to them. Or again, if you'd prefer to donate to them directly, that's completely fine with me. Link in the description below. Like I said, we've worked with them for probably 3 or 4 years now, and they're always great to work with. So happy to do that again. Okay, let's move on to the first story. NVIDIA Lovelace and Hopper to use TSMC silicon rather than Samsung, now that the market, of course, is completely saturated with affordable RTX 30 series cards below the $300 mark. Lots of options there. It's really, there's a lot of stuff you can buy in the GPU world. Anyway, now that that's definitely true, NVIDIA's next generation is on the horizon. NVIDIA is working on its architecture for data center and server GPUs. It has codenamed these, as you may have heard, Hopper and Lovelace. Hopper will be the server GPUs, data center GPUs, while Lovelace will be the consumer GPU architecture. That is the one that will succeed the current Ampere GPUs. Both Hopper and Lovelace GPUs will use the TSMC N5 process node. Currently, NVIDIA uses Samsung silicon for the Ampere GPUs, but it has used TSMC for several products before, and actually on the data center side, the GA100 that's still being made, NVIDIA uses TSMC instead. It uses the N7 process node. That's an actively sold part. After a year of supply chain issues, NVIDIA is moving from a diversified silicon supply chain to a consolidated source. Could sound bad, realistically, with business the way it is and economies of scale. It may be the case that moving to a consolidated source means that NVIDIA can get more wafer allocation. This is one of the biggest challenges with silicon supply right now, where yes, AMD and NVIDIA know they can sell more devices, and certainly they'd be happy to if they could, but the problem is they can't get the wafer supply via WSA or wafer supply agreements from their silicon manufacturers, the fabrication third-party plants that they contract to manufacture the actual GPU, the actual CPU silicon chiplet, whatever it may be, if it's Ryzen, for example. So consolidating probably has some benefit where TSMC will say, yes, we'll sell you more wafers as part of you purchasing exclusively from us or something along those lines, but obviously we're never going to see those contracts in the public, so we don't know. That's really the only, when we were thinking internally about what could the benefit be of moving to a consolidated source instead of having multiple, that was the only one we could really come up with that made sense, other than the typical, maybe there's just a technological thing that Samsung can't achieve. Now, Digitimes and Tom's Hardware both have speculated similar, where they are noting that solely using TSMC maybe for a larger order to result in larger allocation, and time will tell, of course, if this strategy plays out. We'll see how it goes. Up next, the fine, I'll do it myself of hardware manufacturing. This is related to a piece we ran in Hardware News a couple of weeks ago about RTX 2060 12GB cards being on the horizon. This is something that GN confirmed directly with some off-record system integrators in the industry, and the 2060 12GB cards it's a revival, obviously, of the 2060. The theory here is that NVIDIA is in need of saturating some of the lower-end market, can't split enough of its Ampere inventory to lower-end parts, and so it's bringing back an older part that maybe is easier to manufacture the GPU. Now, the problem is they're increasing the memory to 12GB, doubling it, and 2060 is not particularly fast. Doesn't matter how much you mod your game, doesn't matter how big the textures are. For the most part, by and large, if the GPU itself is unable to actually keep up with and saturate that memory, it's not particularly useful. So we'll see how it works when we test it. However, a Russian modder has already done some testing. on a device that doesn't exist, and that's because he made it himself. VIKON, we're going to go with Vic on for this, is no novice when it comes to slapping more memory modules onto a GPU. He's made a name for himself, equipping 2070s and 3070s with 16 gigabytes of memory somewhat recently, and this time, the modder is giving an Asus RTX 2060 Turbo a few more Samsung GDDR6 2GB modules to play with. Disappointingly, but really not at all surprising, the modder did not see much of a difference between the 6GB and 12GB versions in the few tests that he did run. This is hardly conclusive, and we'll have to wait to get a real, in an extent, 12GB 2060 to see if we can find a difference elsewhere, but this mod leaves us wondering still why 2060s need more memory. It's possible NVIDIA will do some other stuff to it. Maybe they'll change the frequency a little bit on the core, but the core itself will likely remain the same. And then as for our theory for why NVIDIA might do 12 gigabytes, we're thinking it's sort of we need to bring back an old part, but we can't admit defeat. We can't admit that we're unable to keep up with supply. We can't make whatever 3050s in a similar price bracket. So how do we bring this thing back and not look bad? And our guess is we'll double the memory and then it'll look like it's a new thing, even though it's not. So that's the best guess we have. And for that mod, we'll have a link in the description below in the show notes document if you'd like to check out the work for the 12 gigabyte 2060 in advance of NVIDIA working on it. Up next, AMD prepping for Intel's i3 Alder Lake CPUs by reviving some of its parts. This was in a leak posted on the Chip Hell forums, which is a Chinese language forum. The leak was posted by Ruxin Shumi Miao Bian Guai, which basically translates to like enthusiastic citizen. AMD is prepping to launch a Zen 2 based Renoir X CPU. This is for socket AM4, so it is not going to be for AM5. And according to Guai Xianshang, the leak will be a 4000G component without the IGP or with a stripped down IGP, one or the other. We're not clear on that yet. The Ryzen 4000 series of CPUs never made it onto this channel, or most others for that matter, other than in news announcements. And that's because it was largely an OEM-only launch of APUs built for pre-built machines. Because these are Zen 2, they're on older technology than modern 5000 series CPUs, and so they're not going to be directly competitive with obviously what exists now, except there's nothing that exists right now today in the low-end camp for modern CPUs. They may be enough to compete with Intel's inbound i3 CPUs, especially with the Alder Lake architecture getting a bit screwy towards the low end. We'll see how that plays out. But since we don't have those yet, and we likely won't have the Alder Lake i3s till next year, we obviously will have to wait and see. AMD could refresh the 4000 series as low-end R3 parts using either poor silicon or fusing off the IGPs if they weren't useful. They could fuse off parts of the IGPs. Typically, companies will do this where if there's inventory that's left over, they can't sell it. The companies being here silicon providers, obviously. One of the options that they have to get rid of the product but still make it useful and make some money is to fuse off components and do product segmentation lower down the stack. Maybe that's what's happening here. But obviously, we'll test these once they come out. These will likely be the last CPUs on AM4. Technically, it's a rumor. Chip Hell has a pretty good hit rate with some of its forum users, and Mr. Enthusiastic Citizen is one of them. So this is a frequent leaker who's had a decent hit rate. All right, Montech takes GN seriously and is changing its case. We've had a couple of experiences with Montech. We had the X3, which is a budget case that we actually did recommend in our best cases of 2021. And you should check that video out if you're in the market for a case and you haven't bought one yet. So that was a cheaper case. It did fairly well for them. The Air 1000 Lite did poorly in our thermal testing. It was okay for build quality, but really suffered in thermals, which was unfortunate because its entire marketing and existence was based on thermal performance because Air is in the name. It's right there in the name of the product. You can't really screw it up once you go that far to commit to a feature of the product. So the problem with it, if you missed the review, was it basically came down to the porosity of the panels, where yes, it's named Air, yes, it has lots of fans, and yes, they've even punched holes into the case, but the sort of ratio of hole to steel was insufficient for airflow. And what we ended up doing was publishing a review where we said it's Air in name only. It's just a marketing thing and really not that impressive. It was subpar at best. So Montech's representative actually emailed us a few weeks ago to inform us of incoming changes to the cases, and we've seen some other news around the cases coming out lately with their launch, so we wanted to share this update with you all. The email said, quote, "Hey Steve and Patrick, after your video came out, Montech has taken the suggestions seriously. 1, they will be updating the new batches of the Air 1000 mesh with a diameter 2.0, pitch 2.8, and open porosity of 46.2%. They attached an image for that as well with the calculations. And they also said any customer that got the old mesh can also apply for a free new mesh by applying on the Montech website. If you are one of those people, you can go to montechpc.com/en/contact.php. The glass buckle, Montech says, will also be improved. And additionally, the front 2 fans will be installed in the 2nd and 3rd positions, which was one of our suggestions after thermal testing. This is actually a phenomenal response, extremely refreshing to see. There are a couple companies in the industry that respond like this. Case manufacturers, typically we see a very good response from, just to name a few because they do deserve to get a sort of a shout out here, but typically Lathan has a great response to criticism. They've made entire new cases on the back of criticism that have been best in class when we've done the end of roundups, like the Mesh 2, for example, the LandQuil 2 Mesh 2 case. Additionally, it was rocky, but Cooler Master. So Cooler Master had a good response by fixing its products. It did completely cut us off, isolate us, and blacklist us for several months. But after we started buying their cases as they came out and reviewing them and giving them obviously the credit where it's due and showing it's not hard feelings, this is just our job. If your product sucks, we're going to say it sucks. And if it's good, we'll say it's good. So anyway, they've recovered from that and have made some pretty good cases over the last several years actually now. And they actually stopped blacklisting us and they started talking to us again. So anyway, a couple companies respond well to criticism. Montech, it looks like too soon for us to tell, but it looks like this is a great start. And really what we're after here is just when something says air in the name and it doesn't have good airflow, we don't want people to buy it and then just feel like they've wasted their money, be disappointed, wish they bought something else. So that's part of why we do the reviews. Consumer advocacy or protection, basically. But we don't try to force a response from the company. If they don't want to do it, then that's fine. That's their choice to not improve their product and make something that is better. Montech's making something better here. They're also going an extra step and replacing the front mesh panel for existing customers. So awesome to see. Fractal, I needed to name them too. Fractal had a great response to its own problem. It wasn't the criticism, they came out in front of it. It was the potential fire hazard issue, but there's a whole series we did on that. So, all right, next one. Intel's secret weapon to security research is a lab. So last year we had fun putting together a piece compiling 10 years of Intel CPUs and doing a revisit. We went back to the 2500K and 2600K and ran almost every generation since in a series of benchmarks. Actually, we looked at the Nehalem CPUs not too long ago before that. In an exclusive with Wall Street Journal, Intel detailed its own historical efforts with CPUs, talking about its long-term retention lab located at the company's Costa Rica facility. With another catchy Intel name, the Long-Term Retention Lab started up in 2019 as a response to the growing security issues being discovered on Intel CPUs. One of the more amusing details from the lab is that despite having made the CPUs in the first place, Intel had to take to eBay to find some of its own older processors. Sandy Bridge was specifically named for this. And Intel, we can spot you next time. If you're missing a CPU, let us know, we'll help you out. We have a lot of them. Just ask. If we don't have one in our trays, we probably have it in our pile of donor CPUs, and surely Intel has the technology to fix it. So fun part here is if you've sold a CPU from Intel that's dating back to, let's say, 7 to 10 years old, you may have sold it to Intel itself. Check the recipient, see where it went. That'd be a fun bit of provenance for your wall where your CPU could have gone but isn't anymore because you sold it to them. But it would be fun to put there if you had it, which you don't. In order to accommodate a decade of technological development and also stagnation, although they didn't say that, the engineers at the LTRL had to dig up architectural materials for many generations of CPU. And at times, they even had to recall engineers who no longer worked at Intel to get some more details. The project is an impressive one. It has plans to expand to up to 27,000 square feet with 6,000 pieces of equipment. The lab gets requests to run different specific configurations constantly from other Intel facilities and teams, and one of the engineers on the project said that they get 1,000 requests a month. The lab runs 24/7 with 25 technicians on hand at any given time to keep the test going. Sapphire launching something out of date. Up next, this is news because who cares? In 2016, Razer took the PC community by storm by launching the Razer Core X external GPU. I had to double check on the name, that's how important it was. The entire industry changed, obviously, and because it's the future, now everyone uses external GPUs. Well, at least one bit of that is true. Razer did sell an external GPU enclosure, and we'd like to hear from all three of you in the comments about how it's been going. There's a reason we're talking about the Core X, though, and it's because Sapphire wants in on the action. At a time when no one can keep GPUs on the shelves and people will buy a GPU even when it's packaged with a bomb, Sapphire has decided packaging its GPUs with a case that can't fit anything else, and a Thunderbolt 3 connection is the best way to go. In the very least, it's a great way to dump some inventory. The sleek aluminum chassis is reminiscent of the Apple system we restored previously, and inside is a Sapphire Pulse RX 6600 XT. We haven't tested Sapphire 6600 XT, but broadly speaking, we've been impressed with Sapphire's build quality in the past. That includes the RX 6700 XT Nitro that we did a teardown on earlier this year, and it's reasonable to think that Sapphire's execution of the 6600 XT might also be good, but we haven't looked at that one. Frankly, though, we were disappointed with the price to performance of mid-tier GPUs in general this generation, but with the context of supply and price, everything changes. It's hard to make a call sometimes. We can make a call based on MSRP very easily. It gets difficult when it's the price is who knows and the third-party seller price is fuck you. Up next, some vulnerabilities. We recently received a tip from a viewer about Gigabyte's BIOS updates. The BIOS version description on a couple of AMD boards, B550 and X570 especially, have been updated to state, quote, major vulnerability updates. Customers are strongly encouraged to update to this release at the earliest opportunity. And it said, quote, customers will not be able to reverse to previous versions due to major vulnerabilities concerns. There's non-specific credit here given, and we'll specify, to Asif Carlsbad and Itai Liba, who are security researchers, a security researcher and a senior security researcher at the cybersecurity company SentinelOne. On further investigation, we found the same patch notes on multiple other Gigabyte boards, including Intel boards. Carlsbad and Liba have recently collaborated on a software tool called Brick, perfect name, that automates checking for system management mode vulnerabilities. System management mode is responsible for low-level system interactions. That would be things like setting fan curves, clock speeds, myriad other things like managing the TPM, which has been in the news lately. And that explains the gravity of Gigabyte's response. Our assumption is either that the SentinelOne team used Brick to dig up and report weak points in Gigabyte's BIOS, or more likely that Gigabyte is patching around the broader vulnerabilities whose discoveries are credited to Carlsbad and Liba. There's no reason to think that Gigabyte is the only vendor affected. Keep an eye on BIOS patch notes, and we'll pull a few up just to see if they've changed in the future. But BIOS patch notes from other companies like Asus and everyone else. Thus far, Carlsbad in particular has been posting a flood of Brick-discovered CVEs, or common vulnerabilities and exposures, as confirmed and addressed by Intel, Lenovo, Asus, and of course Gigabyte. The disclosures just from Intel cover core CPUs from the 7th gen to the 11th gen, so you should update your BIOS, as well as many Xeons and Pentiums. And this story will likely expand to include everyone. Up next, to follow up on a story that we ran in about 2018, UMC settling with Micron over a patent infringement lawsuit. So in 2018, Micron was temporarily banned by a Chinese court from selling 26 of its products in China in relation to the patent allegation, patent infringement dispute. UMC alleged basically that Micron was infringing on its patents, and Micron's response was, no, you. That's actually what happened. Micron said, no, UMC is infringing on our patents, and we're just taking them back. So we're stealing what was ours, and then we're using it. That's not theft. Also, Micron said all of your patents are invalid you facilitated theft of Micron's IP anyway, and nobody loves you, UMC. Part of Micron's official statement at the time was, quote, the patent infringement claims of UMC and Jinhua were filed against Micron in retaliation for criminal indictments filed by Taiwan authorities against UMC and 3 of its employees, and a civil lawsuit filed by Micron against UMC and Jinhua in the United States District Court for California. And that was for misappropriation of Micron trade secrets. In the years since, the legal battle has shifted in Micron's favor, at least in U.S. courts. As reported by TrendForce in late 2018, the U.S. DOJ charged UMC with helping another company to attempt to steal, quote, DRAM manufacturing technology from Micron, as Micron had alleged, so vindication for them. Obviously, this case involves very complex relations. UMC is a Taiwanese company, Micron is an American company, and the ban was enacted in China. So, complex situation overall. The incident that Micron referenced in its statement was the recruitment of a Micron engineer by UMC, who was indicted for supplying Micron documents to Chinese partner company Fujian Jinhua Integrated Circuit Company. At this point, more than 3 years after our last report, UMC has already paid a $60 million fine for trade secret theft, and 2 companies have finally reached a settlement wherein they agree to stop fighting, and UMC will, quote, make a one-time payment of an undisclosed amount to Micron. We love ending the news with a good cyberpunk dystopian story, and normally it's involving GPU smuggling. Like that's a thing now. We've reported on it several times. But this works too. This one is about an unnamed couple that was arrested in Spain and charged with hacking, damage, and fraud. The pair used hacked machines to mine cryptocurrency and were apparently discovered when this wasn't done remotely, like over the internet with all the vulnerabilities we've talked about. No, this was done in department stores. The pair was discovered when department store staff reported pre-built display systems running their fans at full bore and constantly overheating. This surprised us because we've had a lot of pre-builts that do that out of the box. No mining required at all. The best part of the story is how the couple carried out their scheme. A classic sleight of hand. The woman would approach department store staff with her laptop and ask for technical help, which Bitdefender says was typically just help booting the laptop. That wasn't suspicious for some reason. While the staff was distracted, the man would slip a USB stick into the department store computer, which really needs some basic security apparently, to install any disk and nice hash. It was a clever plan, and we even used it on Der Bauer's computer at the last trade show, but he doesn't know that yet. Unfortunately for the crypto Bonnie and Clyde, which is our upcoming NFT, security cameras exist and were used to identify them. That's it for the news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, you can subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab something from us if you want to support us, and through December 15th if you'd like to support Eden Reforestation projects and the people they help as well. And as always, you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus for bonus episodes. We posted a Patrons Ask G on there about a week ago if you'd like to see that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.